Welcome to the Dread Nest, where nightmares hatch.
My name's Daniel. And what I'm about to tell you happened last winter, on a night I'll never forget. It was one of those nights where the air feels heavier than usual, like the city itself is holding its breath. I was working late at the diner. The manager asked me to cover an extra shift, and I didn't think much of it. A little extra cash always helps. But when I clocked out, it was already close to 2:30 in the morning. Most nights, I'd have driven, but my car was in the shop. So I headed to the bus stop, tucked my hands into my jacket, and tried not to notice how empty the streets were. There's something wrong about a city when it's that quiet. The neon signs were buzzing faintly, the traffic lights cycling pointlessly with no cars around, and every sound, every click of my shoes on the pavement, felt like it carried too far. I remember looking down at my phone. Battery at 4%. No music, no distraction. Just me, the cold, and the long wait. And that's when I saw it. Headlights. A bus was coming, slow, too slow for the empty road. The strange thing was, the schedule didn't list anything this late. I'd checked it before I left. The last bus should have been hours ago. Still, the glowing numbers on the front read, Route 23, eastbound. That was my line. My way home. I told myself I was lucky. Just a late-night driver finishing his shift. Nothing to worry about. The bus hissed as it pulled up, brakes whining louder than they should have. The doors opened with a screech, like they hadn't been oiled in years. The driver didn't say a word. He just sat there, face hidden in shadow, uniform old and faded like it belonged to another time. His hands gripped the wheel too tightly, knuckles pale against the dim dashboard glow. Something in me hesitated. Every instinct said not to step inside. But the street was freezing, my phone was dying, and the thought of walking across town at 3 a.m., I climbed on. The moment my foot hit the floor, a smell washed over me. Not the usual bus smell of rubber and gasoline. No. This was sharp, metallic. Like rust. Like old blood. The driver's head tilted, just slightly, like he was listening. But he didn't look at me. Not once. And behind me, rows of passengers sat in silence. Not a cough. Not a shuffle. No one on their phones. Just the sound of the doors creaking shut, and the bus pulling away into the dark. At first, I told myself it was fine. Just a late-night crowd. People too tired to talk. But as I moved down the aisle, I noticed something strange. Every single passenger was sitting perfectly still. Not asleep. Not slouched. Just still. Their heads upright, eyes either fixed forward or slightly down. No earbuds. No phones glowing in their hands. No movement at all. I sat about halfway back. Tried not to stare, but it was impossible not to notice how unnatural the silence was. Even on the emptiest rides, there's always something, someone clearing their throat, shifting in their seat, rustling a bag. But here, nothing. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the faint rattle of the windows. I remember looking at the man across from me. He wore a suit. Neatly pressed. But there was something off. His tie was wrong. It was too wide, like it came from another decade. His shoes were scuffed in a way that didn't match the rest of him, and his hands were folded too neatly in his lap, fingers interlocked so tightly it looked painful. He didn't blink. Neither did the woman 2 rows ahead, hair perfectly curled, hands clutching a handbag like she was posing for a picture. I thought maybe they were just exhausted. Maybe I was overthinking it. But then the bus lurched. And for a split second, the interior lights flickered. That's when I saw it. Their faces. Not changed. Not monstrous. Just wrong. Like I was looking at mannequins pretending to be people. The flicker passed, and they were normal again. Normal enough. I told myself it was just the lighting. My tired brain playing tricks. But my stomach was tight, and every hair on my arms was standing on end. I pulled out my phone, more for comfort than anything else. Screen dim, battery at 2%. No service. Of course. The driver hadn't spoken a word since I got on. I leaned forward, trying to get a better look at him. His head was rigid, facing the road. His hands hadn't moved an inch on the wheel. And that's when I realized. We hadn't stopped once. No red lights. No intersections. Just endless road, dark and unfamiliar, stretching out like it didn't belong to the city I knew. I checked the window, hoping to recognize a street sign, a landmark, anything. But outside was just empty. No shops. No gas stations. Not even street lamps. Just blackness. And faint shapes, moving in it. I tried not to stare out the window again. But my eyes kept drifting back. The shapes outside weren't staying still anymore. They were moving. At first, it looked like shadows. Just tricks of the passing dark. But the more I stared, the more I realized. They were keeping pace with the bus. Some of them were tall, almost touching the treetops. Others were hunched low, running on all fours. They didn't have faces. Or maybe they did, and I just couldn't understand them. All I know is, they weren't supposed to exist. The bus lights flickered again. And when they did, one of the passengers moved. The man in the suit. Slowly, his head turned toward me. Not a casual glance. Not tired curiosity. It was mechanical. Deliberate. His eyes locked on mine, and he just stared. I froze. My phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the floor. He didn't blink. Didn't look away. Just kept watching me, like he'd been waiting for me to notice. The flicker ended. And his head was facing forward again. Perfectly straight. Like it never happened. I swallowed hard, heart pounding, and bent down to grab my phone. That's when I saw the woman's handbag. It was sitting on the floor near her shoes, tilted just enough for me to see inside. There wasn't a wallet. There weren't keys. There weren't even normal belongings. Just teeth. Human teeth, piled neatly like coins, catching the dim glow of the bus lights. I jerked back so fast my shoulder slammed against the window. But nobody reacted. Not the woman. Not the suit. Not a single person. Like I hadn't made a sound. The bus engine groaned louder, and when I looked up toward the driver, he was staring at me in the rearview mirror. Eyes wide open. Unblinking. The bus shuddered. I thought we were about to stop, maybe let someone off. But the driver didn't slow down. Instead, he turned. The wheel screeched in his hands, and the whole bus tilted as we left the main road. My stomach dropped. We weren't on asphalt anymore. The sound under the tires changed, crunching, grinding, like gravel mixed with bone. I looked out the window. There were no streetlights here. Just black trees rising on either side, their branches clawing at the windows as we passed. The shapes outside, they weren't running anymore. They were waiting. Every time the bus lights flickered, I saw them closer. Pressed against the glass. Twisting. Smiling. The bus smelled different now too. Not just old leather and dust. It smelled like dirt. Like open graves. And then I noticed something else. The little boy in the back seat, the one with the crayon. He wasn't there anymore. His coloring book sat open on the seat. The page was filled in completely, every inch scratched over in thick black crayon. No figure. No picture. Just black. I turned forward quickly, pulse hammering in my ears. The woman with the handbag was gone too. Her bag still sat on the floor. But now it was empty. No teeth. No nothing. Just a gaping black void inside, as if it didn't have a bottom. The man in the suit was still there. But he was smiling now. Wide. Too wide. The bus tilted again, grinding deeper into the dark. And when I glanced up at the driver, he wasn't staring in the mirror anymore. He was turned fully around in his seat, looking straight at me. Both hands still on the wheel. The bus kept driving forward on its own. The bus roared deeper into the trees. Every bend, every turn, it felt like the walls of reality were bending with it. The windows no longer showed the forest. They showed other things. Flashes of pale hands scraping against the glass. Faces pressed so close their skin warped, their mouths wide open in silent screams. Sometimes, I swear I saw my own reflection in those windows. Not sitting where I was, but standing outside, looking back at me. The man in the suit chuckled softly under his breath. It was the first sound anyone had made besides the driver. Low. Rumbling, like he wasn't laughing at me, but with something else. Then his head began to tilt. And tilt. And tilt. Until his ear was pressed flat against his shoulder. He didn't stop smiling. The air grew heavy, almost solid. It pressed down on my chest until I couldn't breathe right. Seats creaked one by one as passengers shifted, except they weren't shifting. They were dissolving. Melting into the cushions, like wax dripping into fire. First their legs. Then their torsos. Until only their heads sat upright, grinning wide, before sinking down into the seats forever. The sound that followed wasn't human. A low vibration rattled the walls of the bus. It wasn't coming from the driver. Or the engine. It was coming from the seats themselves. The fabric bulged, stretched, like something underneath was breathing. The whole bus was alive. And I was trapped inside it. The bus slowed. But there was no sound of brakes. It was more like the world outside had stopped moving, while the bus kept breathing. I looked out the window. There was no road anymore. No trees. Just black. Endless, swallowing black. The kind of black that felt hungry. The driver finally spoke. His voice was low. Dry. Last stop. I froze. He hadn't opened the doors. He hadn't even turned his head. But I felt his eyes on me. Every part of me screamed not to move. Not to look. The air thickened, pressing against my skin like invisible hands. I turned anyway. And I saw his face. It wasn't a face at all. Where his eyes should have been were two black tunnels, deep and endless. And inside them, I saw everyone who had ever ridden this bus. Their faces stretching, twisting, clawing at the inside, trying to get out. Screaming silently, forever trapped. The seats around me throbbed with heat. Hands, dozens of them, burst from the cushions. Pale, veiny, clawing up my legs, my chest, my throat. The driver's voice dropped lower. Welcome home. The ceiling split open. Not with light, but with teeth. Rows. Endless rows. The bus wasn't taking me anywhere. The bus was the destination. It wasn't a ride. It was a mouth. And I was already inside it. The last thing I felt was the bus swallowing, the walls closing in, the world collapsing into wet, crushing dark. And the sound of the driver laughing, in a voice that wasn't his. They say if you ever see a city bus running past 2:15 a.m., don't get on. Because no bus should be running then. And the one that does, isn't supposed to exist. I laughed when I first read that online. Just another creepypasta floating around in the darker corners of Reddit, right? But curiosity is a dangerous thing. And I need you to listen carefully, because this story isn't just a story. It happened to me. And if you ever find yourself at a bus stop at 2:15 in the morning, this might be the only warning you get. It was a Thursday night. Or I guess, technically, Friday morning. I had stayed late at a friend's apartment, and by the time I realized how late it had gotten, the last regular bus had already passed. The streets were empty. The city felt dead. And I was too cheap to call an Uber. I figured I'd start walking. But then, I heard the low hiss of brakes behind me. When I turned, there it was. A bus idling at the stop. Its headlights glared too bright, cutting through the dark like knives. The bus number above the windshield was blank. Not out of service. Not a route number. Just nothing. I should have kept walking. But I didn't. The doors opened with a metallic sigh. And the driver just sat there. He was tall. His uniform neat. But there was something off about him. His face was too pale. His eyes fixed forward. Unblinking. He didn't greet me. Didn't ask for fare. He just watched. And something in me wanted to test the legend. So I climbed aboard. At first, I thought I had scored. The bus was empty. Completely silent except for the low hum of the engine. I slid into a seat near the middle. Pulled out my phone. Told myself I was just on some overnight special. But the farther we drove, the stranger it felt. The city outside the windows was wrong. The streets stretched too long. Landmarks I knew were twisted. A diner I'd passed 1,000 times now had a door 10 feet tall and windows that seemed to look back at me. I tried to shrug it off. Sleep deprivation, right? Until the first passenger appeared. I swear to you, I didn't see her get on. One moment the bus was empty. The next, an old woman sat 3 rows ahead. Her hair was thin. Her skin paper white. And she wore a faded blue coat. She didn't move. Didn't blink. Just sat there. Her head tilted slightly, as though listening to something I couldn't hear. I kept checking my reflection in the glass. Trying to convince myself I wasn't losing it. But then, when I looked again, there was a man 2 seats behind me. And I knew him. His name was Eric. And he'd been dead for 2 years. A car accident had taken his life. But there he was. Staring blankly out the window, hands folded neatly in his lap. I froze. My chest tightened. The air on the bus felt too thin, like it had been sucked out. I wanted to get up. But my legs wouldn't move. Instead, I whispered his name. Eric. He didn't react. Didn't even blink. That's when I realized the other seats were filling up. One by one. Faces I half recognized. Faces I didn't. All pale. All silent. All staring in different directions, but never at me. The bus rolled on. Outside, the streets had stopped making sense. We passed the same intersection 3 times. Except each time, it looked a little different. Signs and languages I couldn't read. Buildings leaning at impossible angles. Street lamps bending down, as though watching the bus crawl beneath them. And then the intercom crackled. The voice was wrong. Too deep. Too layered. Like multiple people speaking at once. It called a name. Not mine. A man in the back stood. He walked stiffly down the aisle as though pulled by invisible strings. The bus hissed to a stop. The doors opened. And he stepped out, not onto a street. Not onto a sidewalk. Just into blackness. A void that seemed to stretch forever. The doors closed. And the bus moved on. I sat frozen. My brain screamed at me to hit the stop cord, to demand the driver let me off. But when I looked toward the front, the driver wasn't even holding the wheel. His head had turned all the way around. His eyes, pure black. And he was smiling. I forced myself to look away. And that's when I noticed the old woman in the blue coat had turned toward me. Her lips moved. Dry. Cracked. Her voice was barely a whisper. Don't get off when they call your name. Another stop. Another name. This time it was a young woman I didn't recognize. She rose without hesitation, walked down the aisle, and disappeared into a forest of twisted trees that hadn't been there a moment before. I started shaking, because I knew it was only a matter of time before they called mine. And then it happened. The intercom sputtered. That layered voice spoke my name. The bus stopped. The doors opened. Cold air rushed in, smelling of rot and soil. I could hear something outside. Something breathing. Waiting. Every instinct in me screamed to run. But when I looked around, every passenger on that bus had finally turned. And they were all smiling at me. I stayed in my seat. I didn't move. The driver's head twisted farther. Bones cracking like branches. His mouth stretched into an impossible grin. And the voice spoke again. My name. Louder. Closer. I don't remember what happened next. I must have blacked out. Because the next thing I knew, I was waking up in my own bed. My heart was pounding. My phone said 6:12 a.m. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. Until I looked out my window. And there, idling at the curb, headlights cutting through the dawn, was the same blank-faced bus. Doors open. Waiting. They say grief fades with time. Whoever said that never lost someone to the night. Because time hasn't dulled anything for me. Not the sound of the brakes. Not the flicker of the headlights. And not the memory of Daniel's face pressed to the bus window, mouthing words I'll never forget. Daniel was my best friend. The type of guy who always cracked the worst jokes at the worst times. We'd known each other since grade school, and he was more like a brother than a friend. That night, it wasn't supposed to be anything special. We'd been at my place playing video games, eating junk food, talking about everything and nothing. It was late when he finally stood, stretching, saying he needed to catch the bus before his mom started blowing up his phone. I offered to walk him. He laughed. It's 2 blocks, man. I'll survive. I wish I had gone with him. Because that was the last time I saw him alive. He never made it home. The police said no buses ran that late on our route. The driver claimed he didn't see him. Cameras at the stop showed static during the exact 10 minutes Daniel would have been there. He was gone. No trace. No answers. Just gone. Weeks crawled by. Everyone else moved on. Everyone except me. Because I couldn't stop thinking about the bus. The one I knew ran through there sometimes, even when the city said it didn't. I'd heard whispers, rumors about a ghost bus that picked people up, but never dropped them off. It sounded like urban legend crap. Until Daniel disappeared. And then, one night, I heard it. It was 2:37 a.m. I was walking home from my night shift, empty streets stretching around me. And then I heard it, the low, shuddering growl of an engine. Headlights cut through the fog. A bus rolled slowly toward the stop across the street. Its number board was blank. Its windows black. And yet, in the back row, pressed against the glass, was Daniel. I swear my heart stopped. It was him. Same messy hair. Same jacket he'd been wearing that night. But his face was pale. And his eyes, lifeless. He lifted one hand, palm flat against the window. His lips moved, forming two words. Help me. I stumbled into the street, waving, screaming his name. The bus slowed. The doors creaked open with a metallic sigh. I froze on the steps. The driver sat motionless in the seat. Uniform crisp, cap pulled low. But his skin looked too tight. And when he turned his head slightly, I realized. He had no eyes. Just hollow sockets, staring straight ahead. He said nothing. Just waited. And against every ounce of common sense, I climbed on. The stench hit first, damp, metallic, like rotting iron. The air was thick, suffocating. The seats were filled. Not with commuters. Not with people, but with them. Bodies. Faces pale, lips cracked, eyes wide but unfocused. Every single one staring forward, breathing in slow, shallow unison. I forced myself to walk down the aisle. My legs felt like lead. And there, in the very back, sat Daniel. He looked up as I approached. For a second, I thought I saw relief in his eyes. But when he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. You shouldn't have come. I grabbed his arm. It was ice cold. I'm getting you out of here. He shook his head. They don't let you leave. Not once you've boarded. The intercom crackled above us. A voice slithered through, layered, broken. Next stop. It paused, as though savoring the words. Pale Hollow. The bus jolted forward. The lights flickered. And every head turned in unison, not toward the driver. Not toward the windows. But toward me. My throat closed. Dozens of hollow eyes staring, unblinking. Daniel gripped my hand. When the doors open, run. Don't stop. Don't turn back. The bus slowed. Outside the windows, I saw nothing. Not streets. Not buildings. Just blackness. The doors hissed open. And then the passengers moved. Their bodies lurched upright, joints cracking like branches. They turned their heads toward me, mouths stretching open, wide and wrong. A chorus of voices spilled out, whispering my name. I ran. I shoved past them, their hands clawing, nails scraping my skin. Daniel's voice screamed behind me. Go, don't look back. I burst through the doors, stumbling onto cold pavement. And then, silence. I spun around. The bus was gone. The street was empty. I never saw Daniel again. That he looked up as I approached. For a second, I thought I saw relief in his eyes. But when he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. You shouldn't have come. I grabbed his arm. It was ice cold. I'm getting you out of here. He shook his head. They don't let you leave. Not once you've boarded. The intercom crackled above us. A voice slithered through, layered, broken. Next stop. It paused, as though savoring the words. Pale Hollow. The bus jolted forward. The lights flickered. And every head turned in unison, not toward the driver. Not toward the windows. But toward me. My throat closed. Dozens of hollow eyes staring, unblinking. Daniel gripped my hand. When the doors open, run. Don't stop. Don't turn back. The bus slowed. Outside the windows, I saw nothing. Not streets. Not buildings. Just blackness. The doors hissed open. And then the passengers moved. Their bodies lurched upright, joints cracking like branches. They turned their heads toward me, mouths stretching open, wide and wrong. A chorus of voices spilled out, whispering my name. I ran. I shoved past them, their hands clawing, nails scraping my skin. Daniel's voice screamed behind me. Go. Don't look back. I burst through the doors, stumbling onto cold pavement. And then, silence. I spun around. The bus was gone. The street was empty. I never saw Daniel again. But sometimes, late at night, I hear that engine. Low. Rumbling. Waiting. And sometimes, when I pass the stop, I swear I see him. Still sitting in the back. Still pressing his palm to the glass. Mouth forming those same two words. Help me. The end.